Commander HFY watched the tactical display with growing dread. Red markers flooded the holographic battlefield, each one representing another fallen position. The Krillian Defense Force had held the mining colony of Epsilon 7 for 3 days, but their lines were crumbling faster than melting ice. "Sir, the eastern perimeter has fallen," reported Lieutenant Veltar, his blue-scaled hands trembling as he manipulated the console. "The Nexari breakthrough is complete. They'll reach the civilian shelters within the hour." HFY's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a nervous habit from his homeworld. The Nexari Empire had swept through 7 star systems in as many months. Their biomechanical warriors were relentless, their technology superior, and their hunger for conquest unstoppable. Every species that had faced them alone had been crushed. "What about reinforcements?" HFY asked, though he already knew the answer. The nearest Krillian fleet is 6 days away. The Terran coalition promised support, but Veltar's voice trailed off uncertainly. "But what, Lieutenant?" "They said they're sending soldiers, sir." "Just soldiers, no ships, no heavy weapons?" "The transport arrives in 20 minutes. HFY felt his heart sink. He'd heard stories about humans, the newest members of the Galactic Alliance. They were primitives from a death world called Earth, barely past their first century of spaceflight. What could a handful of human soldiers accomplish against the might of the Nexari war machine? The commander turned back to the display. Nexari forces poured through the breach like a plague. Their warriors stood 3 meters tall, their bodies, a grotesque fusion of organic tissue and mechanical enhancement. Razor-sharp claws extended from cybernetic arms, and their eyes glowed with artificial intelligence. They felt no fear, no pain, and no mercy. "Sir," Communications Officer Thizes called out. "Unknown vessel approaching. It's small, maybe a light transport." "That must be the human reinforcements," HFY said grimly. "How many soldiers could such a ship carry? 50? 100? Through the command center's viewing port, HFY saw a battered vessel descending through the colony's atmosphere. It looked nothing like the sleek warships of the Alliance. Instead, it resembled something cobbled together from spare parts and desperation. Dark metal plates covered its hull, and weapon mounts jutted out at odd angles. Scorch marks and impact craters told stories of countless battles. The ship landed hard in the colony's central courtyard, sending up clouds of dust and debris. Its rear ramp dropped with a mechanical whine, revealing the cargo bay's interior. Smoke drifted out, along with the sound of harsh voices and clanking metal. HFY watched in bewilderment as figures emerged from the ship. They were smaller than he'd expected, standing only slightly taller than his own Krillian frame. Their bodies were covered in matte black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols and markings covered their gear. Written in the angular script of their homeworld, the lead figure removed her helmet, revealing a pale face marked by scars and cold, calculating eyes. Her hair was cropped short and dark, and when she spoke, her voice carried across the courtyard with startling authority. "I'm Colonel Sarah Chun, Terran Marine Corps' 2nd Shock Battalion," she announced. "Who's in charge of this mess?" HFY descended from the command center to meet these unusual reinforcements. Up close, the humans looked even more primitive. Their weapons appeared crude compared to Alliance technology projectile firearms instead of energy weapons, chemical explosives instead of plasma charges. Yet something about their bearing made him hesitate before dismissing them. "I am Commander HFY of the Krillian Defense Force," he said formally. "We appreciate the Coalition's response, but I fear you may have arrived too late. The Nexari forces number in the thousands, and they'll overrun our position within the hour." Colonel Chun studied the tactical situation on a portable display device. Her expression remained neutral as she absorbed the information, but HFY noticed her squad members spreading out with practiced efficiency. They moved like predators, constantly scanning their environment for threats. "How many soldiers did you bring?" HFY asked. 37, Chun replied without looking up from her display. 37? HFY's voice rose an octave. "Against thousands of Nexari warriors?" For the first time, Colonel Chun smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Commander has Anyone ever told you about human military history? I know humans have experienced warfare, but surely against such odds, my species has been at war with itself for 10,000 years, Sean interrupted. We've perfected the art of killing in ways your people can't imagine. The Nexari think they're ruthless. They have no idea what ruthless actually looks like. A massive explosion shook the ground, sending tremors through the colony's infrastructure. Emergency lights flickered as power systems fluctuated. Through the communication system, panicked voices reported Nexari breakthrough forces advancing on multiple fronts. They're inside the perimeter. Veltara's voice crackled over the comm. Eastern sector is completely overrun. We're falling back to secondary positions. Colonel Chun activated her own communications device. Phoenix Company, this is Eagle 6. Deploy for urban warfare. Rules of engagement, Charlie. Show these aliens what humans do best. Copy that, Eagle 6, came the response. Phoenix 1 through 8 are moving to intercept. Time to introduce the locals to some Earth-style hospitality. The human soldiers moved out with disturbing efficiency. They didn't march in formation like Alliance troops. Instead, they flowed like water, using cover and concealment with an instinctive understanding that spoke of countless battles. Their weapons might look primitive, but they handled them with the confidence of master craftsmen. Zexhai followed Chan to an observation post overlooking the colony's main thoroughfare. Below, Nexari warriors advanced in their typical formation, overwhelming force applied with mechanical precision. Their bio-enhanced bodies shrugged off Krillian energy weapons, while their own plasma cannons carved through defensive positions like heated knives through soft metal. Your energy weapons aren't effective against their armor, Chun observed. Interesting. What about their sensory capabilities? Enhanced in every spectrum, Zexhai replied. They can see heat, electromagnetic radiation, even quantum fluctuations. It's impossible to hide from them. Good to know, Chun said, making notes on her device. What about their psychological profile? They don't have one. The Nexari replaced their organic brains with artificial intelligence cores. They feel no fear, no doubt, no hesitation. Chun's smile grew wider. Even better. Fear is what keeps you alive in combat. Without it, they're just walking targets. The first contact between humans and Nexari occurred at the intersection of Main and Industrial Streets. A squad of 8. Nexari warriors encountered 4 human soldiers who had taken positions in a destroyed shop. The aliens advanced with their usual confidence. Plasma weapons charging. What happened next defied everything. Zexhai understood about warfare. The humans didn't fight like any species he'd observed. They didn't hold positions and trade fire. Instead, they moved constantly, using the urban environment as both weapon and shield. Smoke grenades filled the air with dense clouds that confused Nexari sensors. The humans seemed to vanish and reappear like ghosts when they attacked. It wasn't with the honorable directness of Alliance doctrine. They struck from unexpected angles, targeted vulnerable systems with surgical precision, and melted away before the Nexari could respond effectively. Their primitive projectile weapons proved surprisingly effective, especially when aimed at joints and sensory equipment. How are they doing that? Zexhai whispered. Asymmetrical warfare, Tron explained calmly. When you can't match your enemy's strength, you change the rules of engagement. Make them fight on your terms instead of theirs? One of the Nexari warriors spotted a human position and charged with mechanical determination. Its plasma cannon began powering up for a devastating shot. The human soldier's Zexhai could see the name Rodriguez stenciled on his armor didn't retreat. Instead, he pulled something from his belt and threw it with casual accuracy, the small object attached to the Nexari's chest armor with a metallic click. The warrior had perhaps 2 seconds to process this development before the explosive detonated. The blast didn't destroy the alien's armor, but it scrambled its sensory systems and knocked it off balance. Rodriguez was already moving, a curved knife appearing in his hand as if by magic. He struck with inhuman speed, the blade finding gaps in the armor that biological eyes should never have spotted. The Nexari warrior collapsed, its ichor severed from its body's control systems. Impossible, Zexhai breathed. No organic being moves that fast. Humans don't just adapt to their environment, Chun said. They adapt their environment to themselves. Rodriguez has been modified with enhanced reflexes and sensory processing. Legal enhancement under Earth military protocols. The battle spread throughout the colony as more human teams engaged Nexari forces. Each encounter followed a similar pattern. The aliens would advance with overwhelming firepower, only to find themselves fighting an enemy that refused to conform to established tactical doctrine. Humans appeared and disappeared like vengeful spirits. They used improvised weapons and unconventional tactics. When cornered, they didn't surrender. The hunting began at dawn. Commander HFY watched from the command center as human soldiers moved through the colony with methodical precision. They didn't advance like traditional military forces. Instead, they stalked their prey with the patience of apex predators, turning the urban landscape into a maze of death for any Nexari foolish enough to remain. Phoenix 2 to Eagle 6 crackled over the communications system. Located secondary staging area. Count 40+ hostiles, heavy weapons emplacement. Colonel Chun studied the tactical display with cold calculation. Phoenix 7, you have targeting data. Light them up. Copy Eagle 6, firing solution locked. Another missile streaked across the sky, but this time HFY was ready to observe. The projectile moved with impossible speed and accuracy, weaving between buildings to strike its target from an unexpected angle. The explosion illuminated the early morning sky, sending a column of smoke and debris high into the atmosphere. How many missiles do your soldiers carry? HFY asked. Enough, Chung replied curtly. Then, seeing his expression, she elaborated. Sergeant Morrison used to be an engineer before joining the Marines. He builds our ordnance from local materials. Give him chemicals and metal, and he'll make things explode. He manufactures weapons during combat. Human soldiers are encouraged to be creative. Standard equipment is just a starting point. The real weapons are up here. Chun tapped her temple. Humans are tool users, Commander. We've been improvising weapons since we learned to pick up rocks. A new voice joined the communications chatter. Eagle 6, this is Reaper 1. We've got eyes on the main Nexari force. They're regrouping in the industrial sector, approximately 200 hostiles. 200, HFY breathed. Your entire force is outnumbered 5-1. Chion's smile was sharp as a blade. Good odds. Reaper 1, initiate harassment protocol. Keep them nervous. Copy that, Eagle 6. Time for some psychological warfare. HFY frowned. But the Nexari have no psychology to exploit. Their AI cores don't experience fear or uncertainty. Maybe not, Chun agreed, but they do rely on predictable programming and logical decision-making. Humans excel at being unpredictable and illogical. The harassment began immediately. Human snipers, positioned in buildings throughout the industrial sector, began picking off isolated Nexari with surgical precision. Each shot was carefully planned to wound rather than kill, forcing the aliens to divert resources to assist their damaged comrades. Why don't they finish them? HFY asked, watching the tactical display. Dead enemy is just dead, Chan explained. Wounded enemy requires medical attention, ties up personnel, and creates psychological pressure on the rest of the unit. It's more effective to wound 3 soldiers than to kill one. The psychological pressure might not affect Nexari minds, but it certainly affected their tactical efficiency. AI cores began calculating resource allocation problems as wounded warriors required assistance. Formation integrity suffered as units diverted to help their damaged comrades. Then the humans escalated their harassment. Small explosive devices began detonating throughout the industrial sector. Not large enough to cause significant damage, but perfectly timed to disrupt Nexari movement patterns. Each explosion forced the aliens to recalculate their routes and adjust their formations. Ghost 2 to Eagle 6, reported another human voice. Package delivered. Nexari command structure is getting a special present. Chun checked her chronometer. 30 seconds to fireworks. The explosion, when it came, was unlike anything HFY had witnessed. Instead of the clean detonation of military ordnance, this blast seemed to tear reality apart. Strange energies danced through the air, and the Nexari forces caught in the vicinity began exhibiting erratic behavior. "What was that?" Zexai demanded. "Electromagnetic pulse weapon," Chan explained. Sergeant Kim used to work in electronic warfare. She built a localized EMP generator from their own power cells. It scrambles AI cores without causing permanent damage. Very humane, really. The affected Nexari warriors began moving in circles, their enhanced sensors feeding them contradictory information. Their weapon systems fired at random targets, their coordination systems failed, and their communication network devolved into electronic chaos. But that technology is ... Zexai began, theoretical, experimental, impossible? Chun shook her head. Commander, your people think in terms of what should work according to established science. Humans think in terms of what might work if we push the boundaries hard enough. Phoenix Company continued their systematic dismantling of Nexari capabilities. Each team operated independently while maintaining perfect coordination with the overall battle plan. They struck without warning, vanished before retaliation could arrive, and reappeared where least expected. The human named Rodriguez had apparently survived his earlier encounter and was now leading a squad through the colony's underground maintenance tunnels. They emerged behind Nexari positions, planted explosive charges, and disappeared before the aliens realized they'd been compromised. Phoenix 4 to all units, Rodriguez's voice carried over the communication system. The party favors are in place. Recommend all friendlies clear the area. Copy, Phoenix 4, Chun replied. All units move to minimum safe distance. The subsequent explosion collapsed 3 buildings and created a massive crater in the industrial district. More importantly, it eliminated nearly 50 Nexari warriors who had been using the structures for cover. You destroyed civilian infrastructure, Zexai protested. Empty buildings, Chun corrected. We evacuated all civilians before beginning operations. The structures can be rebuilt. The people cannot be replaced. Human military doctrine, Zexai was beginning to understand, operated on principles entirely foreign to Alliance thinking. They were willing to sacrifice material possessions to preserve life, but equally willing to sacrifice life to achieve strategic objectives. The contradiction was maddening. Eagle 6, this is Wraith 3, came another report. Nexari forces are attempting to establish firebase in the eastern sector. Request permission for direct assault. Granted, Chun replied without hesitation. Show them why humans earned the nickname Deathworlders. Wraith 3's assault on the Nexari firebase became a masterclass in human combat philosophy. Instead of approaching directly, the squad used the colony's utility systems to position themselves inside the enemy perimeter. They emerged from storm drains, maintenance shafts, and ventilation systems like creatures from a nightmare. The Nexari, programmed for conventional warfare, had no tactical response for enemies that materialized from impossible angles. Their heavy weapons were designed for long-range engagement, not close-quarters combat against opponents who treated three-dimensional space as a suggestion rather than a limitation. Human soldiers moved across walls and ceilings using magnetic clamps and climbing equipment. They attacked from above and below simultaneously, turning the firebase into a killing field where the Nexari's superior numbers and firepower became liabilities rather than advantages. Impossible, Zexai muttered, watching the battle unfold on his tactical display. Humans evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill them, Chun said conversationally. Everything on Earth is either poisonous, carnivorous, or both. We learned to survive by being more dangerous than our environment. The firebase fell within minutes. Nexari warriors, designed to be the ultimate fusion of biological efficiency and mechanical precision, were systematically dismantled by humans using nothing more than standard infantry weapons and creative thinking. But the human soldiers didn't stop with victory. They began studying the fallen Nexari, examining their technology and biology with scientific curiosity. Portable computers appeared, scanning devices emerged from equipment packs. And the humans began reverse engineering alien technology in real time. "They're learning," HFY observed with growing amazement. "Always," Chun confirmed. "Every engagement teaches us something new about our enemies. By the end of this battle, we'll understand Nexari capabilities better than they understand themselves." The learning process was disturbingly efficient. Within an hour of capturing Nexari equipment, human engineers had modified their own weapons to exploit newly discovered vulnerabilities. Energy shielding designed to deflect plasma was useless against projectiles that created localized electromagnetic fields. Armor plating that could withstand direct artillery hits cracked under precisely applied sonic vibrations. "Phoenix 5 to Eagle 6, reported yet another team. "We've cracked their communication protocols. Feeding false information into their network now." "Excellent," Chun replied. "What's their response?" "They're repositioning forces to defend locations that don't exist and attacking empty buildings. Estimate 20% reduction in operational efficiency." The misinformation campaign created cascading failures throughout the Nexari command structure. AI cores, programmed to trust their communication network implicitly, began making tactical decisions based on false data. Units marched into carefully prepared ambushes, abandoned strong positions to defend worthless objectives, and concentrated forces in areas where human weapons could achieve maximum effectiveness. "This is psychological warfare," HFY said with dawning horror. "This is Tuesday," Chun replied. "You should see what we do when we're really trying." The silence that followed the human departure was more disturbing than the battle itself. Commander HFY walked through the colony's streets, surveying the aftermath of what history would record as the Battle of Epsilon 7. The destruction was precise, almost surgical. Nexari positions had been eliminated with mathematical efficiency, while civilian structures remained largely intact. Bodies of the biomechanical warriors lay scattered throughout the industrial sector, their organic components already beginning to decompose while their mechanical parts sparked and clicked with failing electronics. Not one had been left alive. Not one had escaped. "Sir," Lieutenant Veltar approached with a datapad, his scales still pale with shock. "The casualty reports are unusual. Define unusual." "0 human losses. 0 civilian casualties. Complete elimination of hostile forces." Veltar's voice carried disbelief. "In my entire military career, I've never seen anything like this." HFY nodded grimly. He'd been reviewing the battle recordings for hours, trying to understand what he'd witnessed. The humans had fought like nothing in Alliance military doctrine. They'd turned warfare into an art form, and the Nexari had been their unwilling canvas. "There's more, sir," Veltar continued. "Intelligence reports from other sectors. The Nexari Empire has ceased all military operations. Complete withdrawal from 7 star systems. They're calling it a strategic reassessment? 7 systems? But we only fought them here." "Yes, sir. But news of the battle has spread throughout their command network. Apparently, the complete loss of a full regiment without causing a single human casualty has triggered some kind of tactical reanalysis." HFY felt a chill run through his body. The implications were staggering. One small human force had not only defeated a Nexari army but had intimidated the entire Empire into retreat. What kind of beings had the Alliance welcomed into their ranks? His communicator chimed with an incoming message. The seal of the Alliance High Command appeared on the screen, followed by the grave face of Admiral Korthovel, the Altarian Strategic Coordinator. "Commander HFY," the Admiral began without preamble, "your after-action report has been reviewed by the War Council. We need to discuss the human involvement in this engagement." "Of course, Admiral." "Their tactical assistance was ... significant? Significant?" Admiral Korthovel's expression was troubled. "Commander, do you understand what you've documented? According to your report, 37 human soldiers eliminated over 800 Nexari warriors without sustaining losses." "That is correct." "Sir, The War Council is having difficulty accepting this assessment. Such casualty ratios are unprecedented in galactic military history. Are you certain your observations were accurate? HFY forwarded the complete battle recordings. I've included full tactical data, biometric readings, and timeline analysis. Admiral, I observed these events personally. The humans didn't just defeat the Nexari, they dismantled them. A long pause followed as the Admiral reviewed the data. When he spoke again, his voice carried a new gravity. Commander, I'm ordering you to maintain complete confidentiality regarding human tactical capabilities. This information is classified at the highest levels. Sir, may I ask why? Because the Alliance has just discovered we've been thinking about warfare all wrong. The transmission ended, leaving HFY with more questions than answers. Why would the Alliance classify information about their own members? What were they afraid of? His contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Tisara from the Altarian Intelligence Corps, the tall, crystalline being materialized in his office with the characteristic shimmer of advanced transportation technology. Commander HFY, she said without greeting. I need to conduct a classified interview regarding the human military engagement. Certainly, Captain. What would you like to know? Everything. Start from the beginning and omit nothing. For the next 3 hours, HFY recounted every detail of the battle. Captain Tisara listened without interruption, her crystalline features betraying no emotion. When he finished, she stood in silence for several minutes, her internal light patterns flickering with rapid thought. Commander, she finally said, are you familiar with human military history? Only superficially. They're a young species, barely space-capable for a century. That's where you're wrong. Tisara activated a holographic display. Human warfare predates most galactic civilizations. They've been perfecting the art of combat for 10 millennia. While other species develop peaceful societies and diplomatic solutions, humans continue to fight each other. The display showed a timeline of human conflicts. Wars spanning continents, battles involving millions of soldiers, technological innovations driven entirely by the need to kill more efficiently. The scope was breathtaking and terrifying. Every conflict taught them something new, Tisara continued. They developed concepts like guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, asymmetrical tactics, and strategic deception. By the time they reached space, they had accumulated more practical combat experience than any species in the galaxy, but their technology is primitive. Their publicly available technology is primitive, she corrected. Our intelligence suggests they maintain significant military advantages that are not shared with galactic partners. The soldiers who fought here represent only a small sample of human capabilities. HFY felt the chill deepen. Are you saying they're hiding their true military strength? I'm saying humans understand something the rest of the galaxy has forgotten. War isn't about technology or numbers. It's about will, creativity, and the absolute determination to win at any cost. The implications were staggering. The Alliance had welcomed humans as junior partners, assuming their primitive technology made them useful but harmless allies. Instead, they had invited apex predators to join a community of prey animals. There's more, Tisara said, her light patterns flickering with concern. We've detected similar engagements in other sectors. Small human forces achieving impossible victories against overwhelming odds. The pattern is consistent across multiple theater of operations. How many? 17 confirmed engagements in the past month. 0 human defeats. Average casualty ratio of 400 to 1 in favor of human forces. HFY stared at the data in horrified fascination. The humans weren't just good at warfare, they had turned it into a science. Every battle was a laboratory experiment, every enemy a test subject for new theories of destruction. What does the War Council intend to do with this information? That remains classified, Tisara replied. But I can tell you there are serious discussions about human integration into Alliance command structures. Some members are suggesting we should reconsider their membership status. You mean expel them? I mean promote them. Grant them full strategic authority over Alliance military operations. The suggestion was radical beyond comprehension. The Alliance had operated on consensus building and diplomatic solutions for centuries. The idea of placing warmongering humans in charge of galactic defense seemed like inviting chaos. Captain, surely the other species would never agree to such a proposal. The other species are terrified, she said bluntly. The Nexari Empire has been the dominant military threat in this sector for decades. They've conquered 7 species and enslaved billions of beings. Today, they announced complete withdrawal from all contested territories and requested diplomatic negotiations. Because of one battle? Because they finally met someone more dangerous than themselves. Tizara's words echoed in Zexhi's mind as she departed. He found himself reviewing the battle recordings again, studying the humans with new understanding. They had moved through combat like artists creating a masterpiece, every action calculated for maximum effect. Colonel Chion's final words took on new meaning. Humans have been at war for 10,000 years. We're very good at it because we never stop learning how to be better. A new transmission arrived, this one bearing the seal of the Terran Coalition. The message was brief but significant. Commander Zexhi, thank you for your cooperation during the Epsilon 7 engagement. Please find attached a preliminary analysis of Nexari capabilities based on battlefield intelligence. We hope this information proves useful for future Alliance operations. Colonel Sarah Chun sends her regards. The attached files contain detailed breakdowns of Nexari technology, tactical doctrine, biological specifications, and strategic vulnerabilities. The analysis was more comprehensive than anything Alliance intelligence had produced in months of study, but the most disturbing aspect was the casual nature of the sharing. The humans had dissected their enemies so thoroughly that they were willing to distribute the information, like academic research papers. To them, the Nexari weren't a threat to be feared, they were a problem that had been solved, Zexhi realized. He was witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. For centuries, the Alliance had maintained peace through careful diplomacy and overwhelming defensive capabilities. They had never needed to project force because they had never faced enemies that couldn't be reasoned with or contained. The humans represented something entirely different. They projected force not because they had to, but because they could. They fought not to maintain the status quo, but to achieve decisive victory. They studied warfare not as a necessor,